This is HEI Shipyards, and this is a combat system proposal. The Weapons of Space Engineers 2. These are the weapon sounds that you should be hearing when you fire your guns in Space Engineers 2. In Space Engineers 1, weapons were added gradually over time. We got Gatlings, rockets, railguns, artillery, assault cannons, autocannons, and more. But for a long time, the problem was not really the weapons themselves. The problem was that there was not enough meaningful content to use them on. For years, combat mostly depended on player-made ships, player-made factions, player-made scenarios, or very basic pirate encounters. The sandbox was there, and the weapons were there, but the game did not always give you a strong reason to build a serious combat ship. This has started to change in the last few years with better encounters, more interesting hostile ships, and prototech style content. Those systems gave player a reason to build, armor, and upgrade ships for a purpose, and that is the key point. Weapons are not important just because combat is fun, weapons are important because they support progression. They give players a reason to build ships, they create risk, they create missions, they create encounters, they create the reason to do something other than blindly gather resources. Without combat pressure, progression can become simple. Mine resources, build a bigger miner, mine faster, build a bigger ship, repeat. But when weapons, enemies, and other valuable objectives are part of the game, everything changes. And now, you are not just building a ship because it looks cool, you're building it because it needs to survive. It needs armor, it needs redundancy, it needs power, it needs point defense, it needs internal security, it needs sensors, countermeasures, and a reason to exist. That is where Space Engineers 2 has a huge opportunity. One of the most interesting future possibilities is the NPC behavior, especially the ones that we've been seeing recently. First person NPC pathing. That might not sound like a big deal at first, but it's pretty massive. Most games use something called a navigation mesh. Basically, it's developers manually tell AI where they can walk. They kind of build it, manually, I guess. Most games use something called a navigation mesh. Basically, developers manually tell where AI can walk, and that's what works in a normal game because the world is mostly fixed. But Space Engineers is much different. Players build the ships, players build the stations, players build the corridors, rooms, stairways, hangars, doors, and airlocks, and not particularly well in most cases, including myself. So if NPCs in Space Engineers 2 can actually pathfind across player built blocks, that means they potentially move through ships and stations that players design themselves. That changes everything. Hostile NPCs could board your ship during a space battle. You could board an enemy ship. Interior turrets could matter. Corridor layouts could matter. Airlocks could matter. Ship interiors could become part of combat just instead of decoration. Now imagine that combined with a deeper combat system: radar, scanning, signature, stealth, dynamic armor, and better damage behavior, and more specialized weapons. At that point, combat is no longer just can I out DPS the enemy, it becomes how do I fight in the smartest way possible? What do I arm my ship with? What's my tactic going into this? That should be the goal for Space Engineers 2 combat. A heavily armed prototech cruiser should not be defeated the same way every time. Maybe use artillery or railguns to punch through its armor. Maybe use repeating cannons to strip the exterior systems. Maybe you overwhelm it with missiles or torpedoes. Maybe you could stay cold in low signature until you're close enough to strike, and maybe you disable its engines, board the ship, clear out the NPCs inside, and capture it. That kind of combat creates stories. But for that to work, weapons need clear roles. Every weapon should not do the same job. A Gatling gun should be for point defense. That's going to be countering missiles, drones, light ships, and exposed systems on enemy ships. An autocannon, for example, should be an accurate medium weapon for fighters, gunships, and light armor at medium ranges. A flak turret should be an accurate but effective airburst weapon for swarms of missiles and, fast attacking targets. An assault cannon should be a heavy, deeper fire weapon, but not a precision sniper. A repeating cannon should fire, let's say 105mm high explosive shells very quickly, 120 rounds a minute, boom, 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 stripping armor, thrusters, turrets, and other exterior systems. An artillery turret should fire slower, 120mm armor-piercing rounds for longer range anti-armor work. A railgun should be accurate, firing its sabot rounds for precision penetration. Battle cannons and heavy battle cannons should be the true capital ship weapons. Slow, massive, accurate, and very dangerous. But balancing those weapons should not only be about damage. Capital and specialized weapons should require thought. A torpedo launcher, battle cannon turret, heavy battle cannon turret, railgun, or large laser cannon should not just be a block that you slap on the outside of a ship. It should be a system. Larger cannons could require autoloader blocks, placed directly underneath or within, let's say, 5 conveyors of them. If that autoloader gets hit, it could explode or disable the weapon. And based on what we've been seeing with the more recent changes to how things inside of containers being explodey works, it's a possibility that this is what we're looking at. Railguns and lasers could require capacitor banks. If those capacitors are destroyed while charged, they could create an EMP-like discharge that temporarily shuts down the ship or nearby systems. That adds risk, but it also makes ship design matter. Where do you put the autoloader? How much armor do you put around it? Can hostile boarders reach it? Can a penetrating shot detonate your ammunition? Can a ship survive losing that weapon system if both the weapon and the autoloader go up in flames? That is good Space Engineers gameplay because it turns combat into an engineering problem. Range should also be handled carefully. I know that developers seem to want closer range combat, and I understand why. Close fights are more visual, more chaotic, and more readable. But the answer should not be making every weapon artificially short range. Instead, weapons should have optimum range and a maximum range. A cannon round might technically travel far, but if it's low velocity, has dispersion, and you can dodge it at long range outside its optimal, it may miss a moving target entirely. And that keeps fights close without making weapons feel fake. Specialized weapons should be the exception. Railguns, capital beam lasers, battle cannons, heavy battle cannons, and torpedoes should be designed for long-range or high-value engagements. They should remain accurate, but they should be balanced by other factors. Low rate of fire, high signature, low tracking, high power draw, high heat, expensive ammunition, and vulnerable support blocks. A heavy battle cannon should not miss because of a random spread. It should miss because the target maneuvered, the turret tracked too slowly, or the firing solution was poor. Or the player used it badly. That is a much better kind of balance. Signature is another huge tool here. Charging a railgun should spike your electrical or signature. Charging a laser should do the same, and increase your power draw. Launching torpedoes should reveal your firing position by a signature spike, and a battle cannon should create a huge thermal and recoil signature. It's just signature. Just signature. I don't know why I wrote that. That creates meaningful decisions. Do I stay hidden, or do I fire? Do I charge my railgun early, or do I wait till the last second? Do I use active radar and reveal myself, or stay passive and risk worse targeting data? This is the kind of combat system that would make Space Engineers 2 incredible. Not just more weapons, better reasons to use them, better reasons to build around them, better reasons to protect them. Because the best version of Space Engineers 2 combat is not about who has the highest DPS, it's about who engineered the better ship.